holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
Isn't it true?
It's absolutely true. The example of poison, it kind of brings it to the forefront. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, why am I suffering for someone else's mistake?
Exactly.
So then you say it's absurd for me to suffer. So let that person suffer. Whatever happens to the person happens. But I refuse to suffer for somebody else's errors. And then you have to... Ram hides behind the tree and shoots. Now, what is the significance of this? You want to overcome a weakness. You can't take it head on. In other words, you want to overcome sweets. You can't be having chocolates and mithai in your house. You can't be having a well-stocked bar in the house if you want to overcome liquor. So whatever weakness you have to withdraw first and then shoot. Now, this people don't understand. And then they criticize, he was a king. Why did he hide behind a tree?
Right.
Also, why did he have to have the help of monkeys and squirrels? He was a king, royalty. Any king would have helped him to win over Ravana. But monkeys and squirrels mean the mind and thoughts. So if you want to gain victory, you have to gather your thought forces and then attack a weakness. So, and it's very interesting that the entire country was inspired by role models like Rama and Krishna. We did not have the wealthy as role models like now. So Ram Navami helps us to course correct in a way.
Namaste and welcome to our 12th episode of this show on the Bhagavad Gita with Srimati Jaya Rao. I am your host Ajay. If I'm sounding slightly different, it's because I have a cold. So it's not you, it's me. Jay, how are you doing today?
All good, thank you.
So, one of the things I was thinking about while researching today's show was one of the things that I see in me, in myself, and generally in the world around is how easy it is to get riled up by just the smallest things, right? It can be something as small as the elevator taking longer than it should to reach me, or it can be something slightly bigger when someone passes a snide remark about us, or it could be when someone cuts our lane while driving. There's so many things that can set us off. Or for example, I remember when I was younger, burning my tongue on hot food. That's something you were pretty good at. So yeah, no, I mean, but jokes apart, why has it become so easy for us to get to get triggered by stuff around us, and by people, things, situations?
Yeah, so if you trace it back, trace a moment of irritation and trace it back, you'll always get to desire. So let's say elevator doesn't come up in time. You are carrying the desire that the moment you go to the elevator, it should come up. Okay? And then you analyze and say, is that a reasonable desire to have? Because the reality is that so many people are sharing the elevator. So if you then understand and accept it, you're free from the desire. And then you make correct adjustments in your time. Like you say, maybe it'll take 4 minutes for the elevator to come instead of 30 seconds. And you're free. So with each passing generation, if you look back last 3 generations, for instance, the desires have increased because society, marketing companies, advertising, all this is geared towards increasing desire in you. So even if you don't have a desire, it kind of provokes desire. So the reality is that we are stuck with too many desires, and a large percentage of them are unfulfilled naturally. So this is the definition of stress. Stress is mental agitation created by unfulfilled desire. So now what's happening is each of us have these this bulk of desires gurgling within us. And the slightest trigger is enough to bring about a precipitation of anger. So usually the response, the reaction is far in excess of the trigger.
Yeah.
So then one needs to understand that it has nothing to do with the world, it has something to do with me. And I need to bring this gurgle, this burden of unfulfilled desires, bring it down. And then you're free from it.
But do you see that previous generations, you're saying, so are we saying that previous generations had fewer desires than we do now? What's changed?
Not
What's
really.
changed? Yeah.
The avenues for fulfillment of desires were less.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say your grandfather's generation or even my generation, in my youth, there were only 2 cars available, Ambassador and Fiat. And so you kind of accepted the fact that this is all that I have to choose from. Whereas today, it's the choices are unlimited almost. So your desire then gets
Stoked?
yes, stoked. Whereas then it was in the subconscious. So at least it's not disturbing you.
You know, there's this quote that I read, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. It says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes,
Isn't that true?
it's absolutely true.
Like so many times I think to myself, like I'm like just like burning with anger sometimes, right? For whatever reason. And then I realize the other person is not even aware or doesn't even care. Or it is a situation where, I mean, if a flight is delayed by 5 hours and I've missed something important that was lined up, like, what do you do, right? So the question is then, how do we deal with this anger and irritation, and how do we keep it in check?
So see, like you said, the example of poison. It's very, very, it kind of brings it to the forefront. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, why am I suffering for someone else's mistake? You know?
Exactly.
So then you say it's absurd for me to suffer. So let that person suffer, whatever happens to the person happens, but I refuse to suffer for somebody else's errors. And then you have to talk to yourself. So this self-talk is between your own intellect and your mind. So the intellect, say for instance, you're dealing with a person who is unethical or selfish. You can't expect that person to behave in an ethical manner, to behave in a manner as per your standards, however right you may be. So that is the first thing. You have to remove the unreasonable expectation. And then you have to decide whether I'm going to continue dealing with this person or snap it. But everyone that you meet is not going to meet with your expectations. So you have to accept that the world is what it is. And then figure out how you're going to deal with certain people. That is why a snack that is so popular, Indian snack that is so popular, it's across the world you get it, is bhel puri, chaat. Why is it so tasty? Because it's a mix of opposite tastes. And a lot of Indian food is like that. That is what adds to the enjoyment. And that in a way represents the world. The world is a mix of pairs of opposites, different kinds of people, different elements put together make for an exciting life. If it was just pleasant, you'd get bored. So if you accept the world as it is, life as it is, and then life becomes interesting. A big challenge comes to you, sometimes you have to duck. And then a smaller challenge comes, you ride over it. Yeah. So it's your discretion, it's your judgment that is put to the test every time.
So would it be right to say, when dealing with anger / irritation, that the two things that we need to deal with them are number one, assessment of the people involved and or the situation. And the second thing is acceptance of that, right?
Yes.
These two are essential. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
without either one, you're kind of shooting in the dark.
Absolutely. And if you then look at people, we neither assess nor do we accept.
Right.
But actually, even in accepting, you have a choice. There are things that you can change. There are things you cannot change.
Right.
So you must, like that alcoholic's prayer, which says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the wisdom to change the things that I can.
Yep.
And that is where your judgment lies.
The assessment is important.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, if you just say you become accepting universally, there is a risk of becoming a doormat at some
Absolutely.
level, right?
You become passive,
Yep.
a victim.
Yep. So now, would it be right to say, and now I'm taking it to a bit of an extreme, that anyone who does not get angry is in a state of perfection? Would that be kind of correct, or agitated? In a
See-
sense, I'm pushing it a bit, but something like that. Would you say that someone who doesn't get angry is
By and large, yes.
Yes.
But there is a qualification here.
Yeah.
So if you're an extremely tamasic person,
yeah,
you don't react. That's not nice.
right,
Because nothing is happening inside you.
Yeah.
It's like being asleep. So, barring that, between a Rajasic person, the difference between a Rajasic and a Sattvic person is that, see, as you evolve spiritually, initially you're reacting to everything. And the reaction is, as we said earlier, far in excess of the trigger. Then the level of irritation goes down. So it kind of matches the trigger. Then you reach a state of, like, say, Buddha's state, where nothing in the world troubles you.
yeah,
You're unaffected. And it's not that you're like a statue, you don't react to anything. You decide number one, whether I should respond to this or not. Number two, if so, how I should respond. So you are constantly in command of the situation or even the person.
So I think I get what you're saying about not being angry and not to confuse it with tamas or like a state of indifference. But I think when we come to we kind of the festival of Ram Navami is around the corner, and this anger or lack of anger, which is deemed to be a perfect state, Lord Rama is often idolized as a perfect human being. But could you explain what this perfection means to us in our context, and also the spiritual significance of Ram Navami as a festival, because it's just around the corner?
See, Rama and Krishna are worshipped as the avatars of Lord Vishnu. So they were realized or enlightened at birth. They have never experienced what we go through. And Rama was the 7th, born in the Treta Yuga, and Krishna was the 8th, born in Dwapara Yuga. For those of you for those people who are interested. But both represent perfection. Now, they have been portrayed differently because Ram was born in Treta Yuga, where righteousness, the proportion of righteousness was more than in Dwapara Yuga. So it required a different kind of behavior and conduct. Now, Ram is portrayed as a perfect individual. When you look at him being portrayed as a perfect husband, it doesn't fit into being a perfect king because he set aside all his royal duties, everything, to just find his wife. Same way, when a dhobi passed a comment about her, he banished her. There he doesn't fit into a perfect husband. He is a perfect king, where it is not democracy, where democracy is majority. In those days, a king had to have 100% vote of the citizens. So if there were even one veto, he had to succumb to it. I mean, he had to take that into consideration. So there are several stories like that. And the entire Ramayana needs to be interpreted. You can't take it at face value. And therefore it is that people get confused and criticize him. For instance, this, banishing his wife because some dhobi said something. Or the story of Sugriva and Vali. So Sugriva and Vali were monkeys. And Vali was the older brother. He was the king. For some reason, Sugriva became king. But Vali came back and threw him aside and said, I'm the king. And he married Sugriva's wife. And, so all negative things he did. Now, Vali represents lust. Sugriva represents self-control, the controlled person. So now when you want to overcome your own lust, like a person who has a weakness for alcohol or
Dessert.
yes, dessert.
Yeah.
What must you do is what Rama did. He hid behind a tree and shot Vali.
Yeah.
Right? The story is very interesting. Initially, Vali has the boon that whenever he encounters an adversary, half the strength of the adversary comes to him. So he becomes invincible, however weak he is. Now, Ram says, you go challenge him to a fight. And I will shoot him. So when he goes and challenges him, Vali says, are you mad? What's wrong with you? And then he beats him to pulp. Sugriva goes back and says, Rama, what is this? You think it's a joke? He says, no, the problem is you guys are monkeys. I couldn't differentiate between the two. So after he recovers, he tells him, when you go to challenge, this time you go and challenge him, but wear a mala, a garland before you go, so that I know who's Vali. So he goes and challenges him. Vali again laughs at him. He says, now I'm really going to kill you. But then Ram hides behind the tree and shoots. Now, what is the significance of this? You want to overcome a weakness. You can't take it head on. In other words, you want to overcome sweets. You can't be having chocolates and mithai in your house. You can't be having a well-stocked bar in the house if you want to overcome liquor. So whatever weakness you have to withdraw first and then shoot. Now, this people don't understand. And then they criticize, he was a king. Why did he hide behind a tree?
Right.
Also, why did he have to have the help of monkeys and squirrels? He was a king, royalty. Any king would have helped him to win over Ravana. But monkeys and squirrels mean the mind and thoughts. So if you want to gain victory, you have to gather your thought forces and then attack a weakness. So, and it's very interesting that the entire country was inspired by role models like Rama and Krishna. We did not have the wealthy as role models like now. You have Bollywood, Hollywood actors, you have the rich Fortune 500 rich people. Our role models are only wrong. So Ram Navami helps us to course correct in a way.
Yeah. So I think now that we're talking about Lord Rama as the perfect person, it would be a good time to get into the Sthita Prajna portion of the Bhagavad Gita, right? And this portion of the Gita is from chapter 2, verses 54 to 72, right?
That's right.
Shall we begin with the invocation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
So in chapter 2, verse 54, it starts with Arjuna's question. And he says, O Keshava, What is the definition of a sthita prajna? One established in wisdom, absorbed in samadhi, meditation. How does one rooted in wisdom speak, sit, walk? So, what exactly is Arjuna trying to ask here?
See, if you take a look at chapter 2, it begins with Arjuna breaking down and asking for help.
Yeah.
Now, when he's asking for help in a crisis, a situation where he has to fight a battle, Krishna starts with perfection. There was never a time, what is it? You're mourning for things that you need not mourn for, and so on and so forth. So, that is really irrelevant to his situation.
Yeah.
But why does he do that? For two reasons. Arjuna treated Krishna as a friend, very dear friend, no doubt, but not as a perfect person, not as someone who can help him out of the situation. So Krishna had to reassure him that he had the knowledge, the wisdom, number one. Number two, he had to give him shock treatment because he was emotionally broken down, intellect not available. So when you give, kind of say something that makes the person alert, then you can speak to him. So these are the two reasons why I said that. And now Arjuna is ready for knowledge, but not fully. Because the question he's asking is who's a perfect person? Again, irrelevant to his situation.
Yeah.
But at least he's asking a question. So that's a good point. This portion, 19 verses of the second chapter, are one of the most amazing portions of the entire Gita, where he, number one, defines what perfection is in terms of what we understand. And then gives a clear-cut pathway for every individual to get there. There are no disqualifications. It's not like IIT entrance exam or medical entrance exam where very few qualify.
Yeah.
Every single person is qualified. And it gives you that assurance that even I can get there, you know. And put in very simple terms, which we can understand, relate to, and apply in our lives. So the question he's asking is a technical question. So he's asking 4 questions. Number 1, what is the definition of a sthita prajna? Sthita prajna means enlightened person. Number 2, he says, how does he speak, sit, walk? He's not asking whether he's speaking Russian or Sanskrit. When he says speak, speech is one of the organs of action. So it's a metonym, one that represents all 5. So what he's actually asking is, how is a person who has reached the state of infinity, how does he express through finite equipment? So it's a difficult question. Then how does he sit? When you sit, you're with yourself. So what's going on inside him? We are full of worry, anxiety, this, that, and the other. What's inside him? How does he speak, sit, walk? When you walk, you're interacting with people. So how does a person at a level of wisdom interact with ignorant people? So it's a very practical and it has depth question.
Right.
So then the next 18 verses are this brilliant exposition.
So I'm going to move on to verse 55 now. Or should I read both 55 and 56 together?
Maybe one by one.
Yeah. So in verse 55, Lord Krishna starts replying to the questions. And he says, the blessed Lord said, O Partha, son of Pritha, when all desires of the mind are totally abandoned and one is fulfilled in the self alone by the self, then one is said to be a sthita prajna, one established in wisdom.
Yes. So if you notice, he starts by addressing him not as Arjuna, O Partha. And throughout the Gita, he uses various names which are significant. Because here, he wants to assure Arjuna that, look, there is a bond between us.
Yeah.
Partha means son of Kunti. So, son of Kunti means I view Kunti as my mother, so you're like my brother. So, there is that emotional base on which he's building.
Yeah.
Then the definition. The definition consists of two factors, two aspects. One is the negative aspect, which he presents first because we can understand the negative only, and the positive aspect, which at this moment we can't understand. But it makes sense because you can't do one without the other.
Yeah.
So the negative thing is, the formula is human being minus desire equals God. Now, desire is a force to reckon with. You can't wish it away. You can't just press the delete button on it. How do you deal with it? So the positive aspect comes in as a result of your being in the self by the self. Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. You're satisfied in the self by the self. So self means Atman, which is the highest. Now, let's come back to our own experience. As children, we were captivated by toys, right? Like I remember, you couldn't go past a toy shop without getting inside and asking for something, you know. Today, do you have that desire for toys? It's completely gone. How did it go? If you understand that, you'll understand this verse. How did the desire for toys go? You grew to appreciate maybe video games. And then all these toys went away of their own accord. You didn't say, I will give up the desire. And then as you grow, as people grow into a teenager, you fall in love, you have these little teenage crushes, even the video games fall away. And thus, step by step, now we are grown adults, physical, but spiritual children still. Because what are we doing? We're playing around with toys. The only difference between us and children is the value of the toy is much more. So we want flashy cars, we want good homes, we want money, we want to go on vacation. It's all physical. So what he's saying is, if you want to overcome these desires, you have to pick up a higher desire. You pick up an emotional desire. Like a mother has the choice of an expensive chocolate, exactly what her daughter likes, is given to her. What does she do? She keeps it. And then somebody says, but I thought you liked chocolates. She says, I love chocolates, but I'm keeping it for my daughter. And she gives it to the daughter. The daughter eats it innocently without offering her a bite. Does she feel denied? No. She's totally fulfilled in spite of the fact that she hasn't had the chocolate. Because this is how the physical desire wanes away. Because emotional desire gives you so much more satisfaction. Then you go a step further, intellectual. To gain a PhD, a person has to struggle for 6 years at least. But he goes through that because of this desire for intellectual feeding. And the last is spiritual, is what he's talking about here. When the spiritual bug bites you, then nothing else matches up to it. This is like Nachiketa, who goes to Lord Yama for enlightenment. And Yama says, you're a young man, why do you want enlightenment? I'll give you the wealth of the heavens. And he turns away. And then it so happens that there are heavenly damsels dancing there. So Yama thinks money doesn't motivate him, maybe this might. So very mischievously he says, you can have them too. That's when he looks him in the eye and says, Tavaiva vahas tava nritya gite. You keep your song and dance, Yama. Give me Brahma Vidya. So that conviction that all this is finite and it's there for a while, it goes away. As I age, he actually says that in the Kathopanishad. As I age, my ability, my senses wane. So my ability to enjoy them also goes away. So why should I give up something that is permanent for all these transient joys? And when you have that, then all desires go. So this is the state of perfection. And he continues.
So in verse 56, he says, one is said to be a Muni, sage, rooted in wisdom when one's mind is not perturbed by sorrow, nor does one yearn for joy. One is free from desire, fear, and anger.
So
That's kind of
here,
what we were talking about even just
exactly.
before, right?
So when you understand that the world is full of these pairs of opposites, joy and sorrow are inherent in the world. And when you understand that, then because you have enriched yourself from within, what comes to you from outside does not either add or take away. So you've reached, it's like you go to a billionaire with a foolproof business project, but you say you'll earn 5 lakhs a month. Do you think he'll be interested in? It's like that. Or he experiences a loss of some 25 lakhs. It doesn't even register with him because it all gets rounded off. Similarly, here is a person who's spiritually wealthy and is completely unaffected by these little joys and sorrows that come to him. And again, we must relate it to our own experience. Suppose you're playing a game of Monopoly with your daughter. She's affected whether she wins or loses because to her it means a lot. But you are well above that. And whether you win or lose, you're still happy because what you want is to give pleasure to the child. So when you move to a different level altogether, different realm, then none of this affects you. But this doesn't mean that you're like a statue. You feel it, you don't get affected by it. And this is something that we need to understand. Like in Julius Caesar, Mark Antony was heartbroken that Brutus, whom Julius Caesar considered as his dear friend, is the one who plotted and killed him.
Yeah.
But he set that aside and said, I owe it to Julius Caesar to regain his reputation, to correct the situation. And he goes out there and does a brilliant job. So that is remaining unaffected, where you feel, but you're unaffected.
And in that situation, it's the intellect that will save you, right?
Yes.
There's nothing else.
Nothing else. And that is what we are humans for. Like a mother whose child falls ill, if the mother faints, is affected.
How will you help the child?
Yeah. Then whoever is trying to help is left with 2 patients instead of
Yeah.
1. And then he continues to say he's free from desire, fear, and anger. So again, he's reiterating. If you really look at desire, it is the one thing that comes in the way of your obtaining success, of your being happy, and your own growth. It kind of imprisons you. So, how? It's not just a statement. We need to figure it out. Desire unfulfilled causes mental agitation. And with a disturbed mind, you can't think clearly, you can't act properly, your actions become flawed, you are a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas when the mind is calm and you're dedicated to a higher ideal, in fact, the mind is calm when you're dedicated to a higher ideal, you rise above desire. So, never mind that. At least you have a desire, say, to win the Wimbledon. That desire is there. But you say, in order to get that, I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And while you're doing it, your mind is not on the Wimbledon title. Your mind is on the present action.
Yeah.
Then what will happen? You will effortlessly win. Right up to the finals. Your attention is on what you're doing. So, by and large, if you want to be successful, you have to rise above selfish thought. Therefore, you have to fix a higher ideal. Then, anger and fear are modifications of desire.
Yeah.
Anger we've already seen. Fear is when the desire is fulfilled, you're afraid of losing it. So these are things that victimize you and keep you imprisoned in that mode. And you can never rise above it.
So I have a question now. If we say that desire is like the enemy in a sense, or like you said, humans minus desire equals God. But then without desire, how will we achieve anything of consequence in the world, right? Or what will drive me to get out of bed in the morning? Why should I do the things that I do if I have no desire? Then I can say, or I can just stop doing stop everything and I say I have no desires, so I'm going to stop and then sit in one place and then expect, you know, just things to happen. So
Yes, this is a very common question that is asked. See, what the Bhagavad Gita says is not that you should not have desire,
okay,
but what kind of desire. So most of us have selfish desires that I want to earn money for myself, I need fame, name, whatever. Now, that as long as you're obsessed with it and you just sit there and say, I want it, are you going to get it? No. So you have to set aside that obsession, just as we were talking about the mind and the intellect. The mind desires. The intellect has to come in place and figure out, how am I going to fulfill this desire? You work out a plan of action and fulfill it. That's fine. Like a young man understands he's talented in cricket, he fixes a goal, maybe interim goal, that I must come on I must be chosen in the under 19 team. Now he can't get there if he sits there and meditates on under 19 team.
exactly.
He has to do something. Do what? Acquire merit. So this is the thing. You have to rise above desire. Then the object of desire comes to you because you've done work. You've acquired merit. Then the selection committee has no choice but to take you on. And that's how we should live life. Just keep acquiring merit in whatever field that we are engaged in. And even as a person, as a human being, become a towering personality, then the world will pay homage to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot for us to take away from today's discussion. Would you be able to, just break them down into key learnings for us to take away?
Yes. The first thing we discussed was anger and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that led us on to perfection. What is the immediate festival that's coming up is Ram Navami.
Yeah.
And an amazing role model that Lord Rama presents to us. And we looked at some of the stories and the significance behind it.
Yeah. And especially with regards to anger, there were two things that we said were really important. One was assessing the situation, and the second was accepting. Having assessed, then accept what you can't change.
Yes. Then we went on to the second chapter of the Gita. The first verse 55 gave the definition, and 56 spoke of how he reacts to things that are coming to him from the world. Joy and sorrow that comes to a person of wisdom. And anger, how he rises above anger, fear, which are modifications of desire.
Okay, great. So I think we'll close today's session with our invocation.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. As always, this week, we have the spiritual retreat coming up very soon. So if you're still interested in that, feel free to get in touch with us on WhatsApp or email through the website. It's an immersive experience. It'll help you kind of unplug from all your material distractions, plug into your spiritual soul, your spiritual side. So I think it's still a great opportunity for you to take that first step. Otherwise, please do share, like, and subscribe. And do share your questions in the comments below if you have any. We'd love to address them going forward. Have a great week. See you.